Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, the Buck, Kirk Buchner, the owner, the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com, and its sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're going to bring back Vinny Lospinuso, the football wunderkind, who knows more about Pro Football Hall of Fame than probably the people running it. We're going to look at Part 6, and that's the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and some of the former players who really deserve another look for Football Hall of Fame consideration. Without further ado, here's Vinny. Vinny, it's good to have you back. Yeah. This will be the easiest one we've ever done, looking at the NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, the NFC South is easily the youngest division within the National Football Conference. However, do not let the age fool you. The NFC South has maybe not as many as some other teams in the NFC, but the NFC South, its hard hitters are really, really hard hitting, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and there's some really solid people that we're going to look at. Some that are on the cusp of getting into the Hall of Fame and will shortly. There's a few that their fan bases are really clamoring for, and a few that I don't know why they're pushing at all. But that's really every division. But this one, I don't think it's going to take too long, and it'll be sort of a nice breather before I'm imagining we're going to finish off with the NFC, or not finish, but go to the NFC East next, and then the NFC Central is going to be
NFC North.
Yeah, or NFC
North.
Yeah.
It's not the Central anymore. It's not
yeah, I know. I was thinking of I'm just showing my age again. I'm thinking of the old what they used to call the Norris division of football. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm old. But yeah, I guess we'll start off with the Atlanta Falcons, continuing that whole alphabetical list. There's a few people in Atlanta for former Falcons that are worthy of consideration, saying that it's always the same name that comes up over and over and over again. I know you've got to be thinking of the same guy I'm thinking of right now, right?
Absolutely. There is no question in my mind that the best Atlanta Falcon currently not in the Hall of Fame is Tommy Nobis.
Tommy Nobis, yep. And that's the one where that name comes up a lot. Actually, when I first started the site, he wasn't ranked as high as he is now, and that was sort of the feedback I got the most, or the negative feedback, let's just say, I got, was why is he ranked so low? And it all came down to people in Atlanta loved this guy. They just absolutely loved him, and they still do. And he's got
their first ever draft pick.
Yeah, and he's got a Hall of Fame resume, and they loved him even though they remembered him, even though their team was crap. It's not like when we get to New Orleans, whose team was crap early, and it's not like there's any early Saints from the first decade anyway. That's really worth talking about. This is coming from a Saints fan. I got a question for you. I don't think it really matters, but Nobis passed away recently, and they did say that it was due to complications from CTE. Do you think people or the voters are really going to give a shit about that? I don't think they do in football, but what do you think?
At this point, there's so many players from the NFL that have either had CTE, had a lot of concussions, and died from them. So it's just another guy in the long list. I mean, that's kind of why. I mean, if there was only one or two guys that actually had a serious disease, then it would. But because there's been so many people that have turned out they had CTE, I don't think it's going to affect it at all. Mm-hmm. And it's not a disservice to Tommy Nobis. It's just the fact that there's so many guys that have either had CTE or have died from concussion-related symptoms.
Yeah, and that's very prevalent. Yeah, and that's just one thing I wanted to touch on. I agree with you, Vinny. I don't think it's going to be a factor going forward. There are sort of off-field factors that can come up, and one I'll talk about a little bit later. But Nobis, I think if there are a few other names from the Falcons, but I think, would you agree that if Falcons fans could just sort of get Tommy Nobis in, they'd sort of forget about almost everyone else of that era? Because there's not a lot of other people they're really pushing that hard for.
There's a part of me that says yes, but there's a part of me that says no. In case anyone's curious what Tommy Nobis' career was, he was called Mr. Falcon. He was their first ever draft pick. When the Falcons entered the league, it's just like the Buccaneers. Their first draft pick was Leroy Selman. Leroy Selman makes the Hall of Fame. The Jacksonville Jaguars' first ever pick was Tony Pacelli. He will eventually make the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons' first ever draft pick was Tommy Nobis, and he has a very, very strong track record. Probably one of the very best linebackers that are not currently in the Hall of Fame. When he won Rookie of the Year in 1966, he was a 5-time Pro Bowler. He was a 2-time All-Pro. He was part of the 1960s All-Decade team. He had his number retired. For instance, Larry Chonka said that he'd rather play against Dick Butkus than Tommy Nobis. He also said that also on the Hall of Very Good class, he was on the third ever list.
And a college football Hall of Famer, I believe.
Yeah, he was one of the best linebackers. He was one of the best players in college football at his time. Easily, arguably the best linebacker back in Texas University.
Yeah, I would have loved to go back in time and have stock in Nobis jerseys in Georgia. I'd probably be making pretty good money there. And he was at. There are other names in Atlanta, so I want to bounce off a few and see if you think that there's any sort of hope for them. Jesse Tuggle comes to mind, just for staying on the defensive side of the ball.
I'm going to mention Jesse Tuggle. You see all these Cleveland Browns fans mentioning relentlessly how much they want Clay Matthews Jr. in the Hall of Fame, and I don't disagree with them. However, they want to mention tackles all they want. Matthews does not have the most amount of tackles ever. The person with the most amount of tackles, solo tackles, in NFL history is Jesse Tuggle.
4-time leader.
All-time leader.
Well, also a 4-time season leader.
Well, yeah, he was. And he also was a 3-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowl. But just think about this. Can you imagine having the most amount of tackles all time?
Well, I can now.
And not being in the Hall of Fame?
And, well, what's the big thing about football? It's tackling. So, and it's almost like, what's a good analogy? Having the most goals in hockey and not being in the Hall of Fame. And that's not the case, is it?
Nope. And the problem with Jesse Tuggle is you definitely see some Falcons fans mention him, but the reason why they don't mention his name as much is because of one reason. It's because Nobis isn't in yet, and even though that Tuggle's not in the senior pool, he's not even been a semifinalist yet.
No, never. He's never been a semifinalist. He's never been a first-team All-Pro, so I wonder if that's sort of part of it, or just when he's playing in Atlanta when Atlanta they were barely on the football map. It's one thing when you're an expansion team. It's quite another when you're bad for year 10 through year 15. Atlanta was a football wasteland for a long, long time.
Yeah, when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, yeah, they did make the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 33, I think it was, where of course they lost to the Broncos. John Elway's final hurrah. Jan Reeves was also their head coach, but other than that, the Falcons were they were there, but they weren't really notable.
Yeah, no, and it's not like it is now. Now there's a very large fan base. They're an excellent team. I know that you are huge right now on Matt Ryan. Probably you banged the drum for Matt Ryan harder than anyone else almost on Twitter in terms of just calling him a legend right now.
Oh, yeah, but before I get to him, there actually are a couple Falcons I do want to mention.
Can I guess who they are? We're talking former Falcons?
Yes, talking former Falcons.
Okay. One guess would be Mike Ken.
Yes, Mike Ken is definitely one of them. He was a semifinalist a couple times. Unfortunately, he actually made a semifinalist in his 16th year, 17th year, and 18th year, and then this year he fell into the seniors pool. Mike Ken is considered a very underrated tackle for his time. You definitely see Falcons fans mention him quite a bit. Obviously not as much as Nobis and Tuggle, but you do see push for Ken here, push for Ken here. But Mike Ken was great and all, but he's not the offensive tackle from the Falcons I want more. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I think Mike Ken is definitely deserving. But the Falcon the offensive tackle from the Falcons that I want to see in the Hall of Fame more
Mm-hmm.
is George Kuhns.
Okay. Yep.
I mean, George Kuhns was an 8-time Pro Bowler as an offensive tackle.
Yep. Very good player. Yes, definitely.
He was also on the All-Pro team 5 times as an offensive tackle.
Yeah, no, Kuhns is a very good one. I'd have him over Mike Ken personally.
Yeah, me too. I would have Kuhns over Ken personally because, like, the reason that's why he's not even on the All-Decade list is because every single offensive tackle on the 1970s All-Decade team is already enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm looking up the list right here of the All-Decade team. You see, for the offensive tackles, we would see that all of them, Art Shell, Rayfield Wright, Dan Deardoff, and Ron Yari, all in the Hall of Fame, and all of them have tackles.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to add another player or two, I guarantee you George Kuhns would be on that list.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree. The only other one that I sort of think, well, actually, there was one name that sort of comes up sometimes from Falcon fans, and I wonder if they really remember. Because I always thought he was a bit more of a gimmick than a really good player, and Andre Rison.
I thought Terrell Owens mentioned his name, that he wants Andre Rison.
Well, yeah, I could see why, because they were cut from the same cloth. Andre Rison was Terrell Owens before Terrell Owens was Terrell Owens. Owens was a much better wide receiver. I think Rison petered out at, I'd have to look this up, but I believe his high water mark was like around 1,250 in yards, which is still, very good. But he was 5-time Pro Bowl. He had a few good years, but he's always going to be best known for when his house got burned down from the dead girl from TLC.
Actually, I remember him more for the guy that did great with the Falcons, and then when he went to the Browns and basically he was an Albert Hainsworth for the Browns. And by that, I mean they spent way too much money on a guy, and they went with him in like a year. Because he was terrible with the Browns.
He was.
That's what I really remember him.
Yeah, and Rison was. I mean, I loved his nickname, Bad Moon. How do you not love that? But
it's a great nickname.
Oh, for sure. But he's just not. There's just too many great wide receivers, and he wasn't great for long enough.
Also, he kind of reminds me of another guy that was a good wide receiver for many teams. Brandon Marshall. I think a lot of similarities to him. As in a guy that was with a number of teams. I mean, with Marshall was mostly with the Broncos, but Marshall was with a total of 7 teams in his career,
which does not help at all.
I mean, and as for Rison. Oh, would you look at that? How many NFL teams did he play for? A total of 7.
Yeah, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, like it's
a little different because Marshall was also consistent wherever he went. Rison had by far his best ones with the Falcons, where he was a 4-time All-Pro and he was a Pro Bowler 4 times there, but he never led the league in touchdowns since. He never was an All-Pro since. He only had one more Pro Bowl season. That was when he was in 1997 when he was just the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so and at that point, then it was almost like that was his last hurrah. He never had anything even remotely close after that. I'm trying to think, was he with the? No, he was still with the Falcons when his house burned down. I still remember that almost like that was yesterday.
Yeah,
that's right.
I do remember. No, I think it was with the Browns during that time.
I'd have to look that up. I don't know if he was with the Browns at that time, but I mean, it would have been perfect for that sort of like stage of his career.
Take that back. He was with his final. That was his final year with the Falcons. And
that's why
his girlfriend was Lisa Left Eye Lopez, who unfortunately died in a traffic collision in 2002.
That's why I say you don't go chasing waterfalls.
No.
But
definitely not. And there's actually one other Falcon that from the senior pool that Falcons fan mentioned, but I would say there's more deserving ones than him. Jeff Van Note.
Yep, that's the only other one that I thought would be worth even sort of giving a bit of a shout out to. He's he's not likely to really see that. I don't know that he should, but anyone with 6 Pro Bowls, you got to take another look at. Wouldn't you agree?
Actually, it's not that. The fact that he played the center position for 16 years is what really stands out to me.
Which is rare and more rare and rare all the time. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Rare. As a centers usually fizzle out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And he was still playing at a Pro Bowl level in the mid-'80s.
That's true, too.
And how often do you see that from a center? But I got to say, 2-time second-team All-Pro. I mean, I'm nothing against Van Note, but we mentioned Novus, Coons. We mentioned there's more deserving Falcons than Jeff Van Note. Nothing against Van Note, but if Van Note wants to have his time, he needs to let his buddies Ken and Coons and Novus, of course, make it there before him.
And I think it just goes back to what we were saying originally. Falcons fans, it's Tommy Novus or bust, despite the fact that there's some other good names in there. Novus is, I think, discussed more than those other 5 names we've mentioned combined by a wide margin, I'd say, too.
I want them to be more vocal about players they want, because other than Novus, they're like, I don't know if they have a chance. It's not like they have social media where they can mention a lot how they want other players. Look at the Raiders fans, look at the Broncos fans, look at the Patriots fans. The argument you see is, they're not as successful as those teams. So I guess, boo-hoo, I guess we have no chance, which, by the way, is such an absolutely pathetic and defeated mindset, if you ask me.
I'm tired of looking at Raiders fans. I've had to look at Raiders fans far too often since we started this project.
Hell, Raiders fans might have had success, but success or not, knowing their personality, they don't care. They're going to be aggressive, and I kind of like that. But the Falcons fans, they can sometimes be kind of passive because they think that, they had too much bad luck. That means they don't expect anything.
I especially love every time that there's some tweet regarding something stupid a Raiders fan said. All of a sudden, it's in my message box from you.
Oh, it's always like, oh man, I'm sure there needs to be more memes of Raiders fans. I know there's a lot of them, but come on, we need more Raiders fan memes. Nothing against Raiders fans. I absolutely love them to death.
Well, we'll see what happens.
For different reasons.
We'll see what happens when it's the Vegas Raiders and how that fan base changes.
Oh man!
All right, so I don't want to go too much on the current players. I think
there's one current player from the Falcons.
Right, but yeah, I just want to preface it with because of some other projects that we're working on. I think I don't want to touch on the current ones as much, but I want you to sort of talk about Matt Ryan, and the reason why I say that, everyone I think who's listening to this knows that Matt Ryan is an excellent quarterback, but I think Vinny's going to tell you why he's also underrated.
Just Matt Ryan was drafted around a year and a half after Michael Vick was popped in jail because he decided to use dogs in a ring. And no, I don't really see Michael Vick making the Hall of Fame personally. But then again, there's nothing wrong with that because Ryan is a much better quarterback than Michael Vick. Yes, Michael Vick might have been flashier. He might have thrown left-handed and, he's also black too, which was also a little bit rare. And yes, Matt Ryan isn't exactly the most sexiest looking man. He's just he can scramble, but he's a white guy. He's a pocket passer. Doesn't really entice you as much as Michael Vick. But do not let that get to your head ever. Don't ever think of that to your head when you're talking about Matt Ryan, because Matt Ryan is arguably one of the most, I would say personally, he is the most underrated player in the NFL currently as we speak.
Wasn't he just ranked number 66 on NFL 100 or 69?
No, 69. He was number 69, and he had an MVP caliber season this year,
which is on par for what he's been doing for the last few years. As someone who's like a diehard Saints fan, he scares the crap out of me.
Yeah. I'm going to say that a lot of stats for Matt Ryan.
Oh, please do.
Quarterbacks in NFL history that have had over 40,000 yards, over 260 touchdowns, and a completion percentage over 60% in their first 11 seasons. Out of those three, Peyton Manning, he will be first ballot like that. Drew Brees, still active, will be first ballot like that. And the last guy on that list is Matt Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And out of all of them, Ryan has the most out of all of them in yards. In fact, speaking of yards, Matt Ryan, no one else has thrown more yards in their first 9 years, 10 years, or 11 years than Matt Ryan. Not Drew Brees, not Peyton Manning. It was Matt Ryan. I know that people want to mention all the stats and wonder how they're inflated. Yes, there's many other guys from that same era as him.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But they didn't break that record. It was him who broke that record.
Do you suppose that the only thing right now keeping him from the conversation, and granted, I don't think a lot of people are even, because he's still a relatively young quarterback, and I said, well, not for a young football player, but for a quarterback, you can go much later in life, is that he didn't win that Super Bowl.
Who cares? I'm going to say right now, who cares? Matt Ryan had probably the greatest performance ever by a quarterback who did not win the Super Bowl. In fact, if we were to look at his passer rating, his passer rating in the Super Bowl 51, 144.1. That is a near perfect passer rating.
That may be, but they're still going to point to the same stat, 0-1. For a quarterback, it matters.
Do you think I care?
I can definitely see that you don't. I'm just saying that that's something that does matter. For a quarterback, more than anything else.
No one else had a higher. I mentioned that passer rating. No one had a higher passer rating in the Super Bowl than any quarterback has much in. Like in the last 30 years, he has the highest, and he lost. Well, it's more specific than that. Shanahan, who's actually a really hated man in Atlanta right now, still blew that game. And also, if I recall, weren't blown leads a defensive statistic?
I don't disagree with what you're saying, Vinny. I'm just throwing that out there because when we get to the NFC East, and not that I want to belabor this guy too much, there's a lot of people saying, well, Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer because he won 2 Super Bowls. I don't think he is. I'd put Ryan over Eli any day.
I'd put him over Eli, but I also want Eli too, but for different reasons. Also, you're going with the playoffs again. He has the 3rd highest passer rating in playoff history. I know I'm mentioning passer rating a lot, but if you're only just behind Starr and Warner, at least they got to account for something.
No, and that's very valid. And I wanted you to sort of like bring that up because I think a lot of people, myself included, I didn't know about that first 9, 10, 11 years that you were mentioning, are aware of some of the statistical records, nice English, Kirk, that Matt Ryan has done. He's a much better quarterback than people give him credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, next year, he's going to do it. He will become yet another quarterback to reach 50,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. And so, 300 touchdowns, which, again, also bodes well for him. And, of course, this is also another interesting statistic. You know why he's called Matty Ice? Because no quarterback in the history of the league has more game-winning drives with just a minute left than Matt Ryan.
As a Saints fan, I'm very aware.
Yeah, you should be. Also, we know about what happens in the minute left in the NFC Championship, but I'll get to that when we get to that.
Nice. All right, so move on to Carolina, and Carolina is a team with a very interesting fan base. And please, if there are people listening from Carolina, please tell me that I'm wrong here. But I got to go back to being a Saints fan. I've gone to when I was living in Toronto. I went to quite a few Panthers games with my Saints gear because I knew I wasn't really going to get harassed. The fan base there, you're not that You're not that passionate.
It's funny considering that, out of all the teams, a Panther is probably the most all the names and then Saints. All of them are intimidating except for the Saints. You think a name like Panther, tough, gritty, and the fans, hi, y'all.
Well, it wasn't quite like that. Actually, I was just sort of I was making friendly bets the whole time with other Panther fans and just whoever got a touchdown to buy the other a beer, shit like that. So, actually, I think I wasn't too fortunate. I had to buy quite a bit of beer, so they were all pretty kind to me that day. But for those games, I didn't get to see the New Orleans win a whole lot. The one I'll always remember too is I went to that. It was the Saints' last regular season game the year they won the Super Bowl. So of course they already had everything locked. So Breeze didn't even play. Whatever.
And the Panthers, out of all the teams in this list, they are the youngest.
Mm-hmm.
When they came to the league, just like the Saints and the Falcons, they were part of the NFC West because who needs geography? And this is a team that has never had a back-to-back winning season.
I didn't know that. They've never done that.
No. Now, don't let 2014 is what's going to fool you because that was a year where the Panthers won their division, but they were 7-8-1.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, they never had a back-to-back winning season. They've never had that in their history. It's like, in fact, I didn't expect them to make the playoffs because of that track record. Like, oh, they were 6-2. I don't know. I think they're gonna finish 8-8. And what do you know? They finished 7-9. So they didn't have a non-winning season. They just had a losing season.
No, so that's sort of the perils of a 4-team division. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Now, the Panthers do have some qualified players. Now, you just look at the two recently retired players, Julius Peppers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I need to really say much about Julius Peppers. He's one of the greatest players in NFL history.
Yep.
You look at Julius Peppers, it's a body of work, 9-time Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro, Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's also all-time in sacks.
And he was a standout at UNC. So, I mean, he's...
Yes, he was.
Yeah, so, he's North Carolina through and through. So, it almost feels, and I don't know that that's necessarily true or not, because he may or may not be the first real Panther to get in, but... He feels more like a Carolina Panther, even though he didn't play his whole career there. He had a couple good years in Chicago, but yeah.
The first ever true Panther to make the Hall of Fame was Bill Polian. And
man, I don't really think about players.
Maybe the Bills.
Yeah.
If you say maybe the Bills or the Colts more so. Okay, what about Kevin Green?
Kevin Green, I do not consider him a Panther.
He did win Defensive Player of the Year there.
I know, but
I don't consider him one either. But it's one.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You think Cam Newton's on a Hall of Fame path?
Unlike Matt Ryan, where I can easily say yes, Matt Ryan definitely is. Cam Newton is a lot trickier, considering that unlike Matt Ryan, he doesn't throw the ball as much. And he also tends to run a lot more. It's very, very tricky with Cam Newton because he hasn't been to a Pro Bowl since he won the MVP and lost Super Bowl at 50.
Mm-hmm.
And he has faced some injuries here and there. We all know about his feud with the officiating and how he's been hit a lot. And of course, you're going to have some people that say, "Oh, it's a racism thing," which I have no idea if it is. Maybe I don't know. It might be a bit of a stretch.
I don't think so.
I don't know. But
I think it's just that he hasn't he hasn't been as consistent.
He just hasn't been as consistent.
I want to think that we've gotten so far past race in any of this stuff. I mean, obviously we haven't in some cases, but I'd like to think that we have. But I'd agree with you. He could be a Hall of Famer. He could easily be completely injured and out of football in 3 years. Both of these things are equally possible to me.
Yeah, he's only had one season where he's thrown for 4,000 yards, and that was his rookie season.
Right, but I mean, at the same time, though, and you touched on this. He isn't someone who's always going to beat you with his arm. He can beat you with his leg. I mean, there are times where he's been that team's best rusher.
Yeah, like oftentimes. Well, obviously not now because you have Christian McCaffrey, but in many cases that is the case. I mean, he has 58 rushing touchdowns, so almost like Michael Vick in a way, except Cam Newton, he won the MVP, and I was touching on how the Panthers have had a back-to-back winning season. Cam Newton's Pro Bowls 11, 13, 15. So he never had a consecutive amount of Pro Bowls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which goes back to the consistency.
But then again, Matt Ryan also has the same thing. But Matt Ryan is very, very different. I don't know. Like with Cam Newton, it's a bit tricky for him. I'd say he still needs to give it a few more years. Okay. However, I would not say that for a guy who recently retired, Steve Smith Sr.
That's the only guy I really want to talk about, actually, in terms of the Carolina. What do you think? Is he a lock? Like he thinks he's a lock?
Like a lock for the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
He's not making a first ballot, I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He finished 8th all-time in receiving yards. One of the best players of his generation. Probably him and Julius Peppers are the greatest Panther in history. He won Comeback Player of the Year, led the year getting receptions once, and receiving yards once. And he also was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. He also became the 14th player in NFL history to have 1,000 receptions. I mean, he was one of the most dominant players of the 2000s. So you need to always keep that in mind for that decade. There's very, very few that have the amount of consistency and impact as Steve Smith Sr. Well, he used to be just Steve Smith, but then he had a kid. But I don't know. Like he's definitely going to make the Hall of Fame. But if he doesn't in his first few years, it's not going to be because of his mouth. It's going to be because there's a lot of wide receivers not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. It's just a matter of he's getting in, but he's not getting in first ballot. I'd peg it maybe 5th, but again, who's to say?
I don't know. Like I said, Isaac Bruce finished 2nd all time in receiving yards and still is not in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he is not in the Hall of Fame, Isaac Bruce yet. If Isaac Bruce is not in the Hall of Fame, I would say Steve Smith has to wait at least 5, 6, maybe 7 years. Honestly.
Yeah, and he could be a finalist right away, and then a finalist year after year after year after year, like Tim Brown and Andre Reed were.
Yeah, Raiders fans, they definitely let people know they wanted Tim Brown in it.
Yes, for sure. I think with Carolina, there's really not much else to sort of go over, unless there's one player that you're thinking of that's worth a mention.
Two active players. For the Panthers, yes.
We're supposed to stay away from active players, but then I ruined it myself by talking about Newton.
I'm just gonna say 2 of them just a little bit briefly. Luke Kuechly,
yep,
one of the best linebackers in the league.
Agreed.
He won Defensive Player of the Year in his 2nd year in the league. He's been like a 5, 6-time first-team All-Pro. I mean, he also won the Rooney Award for how great he was as a teammate. Now, granted, I'm gonna this is how much the peers respect him. I mean, the peers respect Luke Kuechly tremendously.
Yep, agreed.
Like he won the Buckets Award as the best linebacker in the country. He won that 3 times.
Yeah,
for the Buckets Award for professional. And that's something pretty special. Like if you're ranked the best linebacker in the league from the Buckets Award in there, usually it's the collegiate winners, but like 10 years ago they started doing professional, and Luke Kuechly won it a total of 3 times. The most ever.
And that means a lot. And you can see that every time you watch the Panthers play. Just how he is... I don't see that many people sort of command their defense like Kuechly does.
He was the commander of their defense in his rookie season.
Yeah, and you will be for another few years. Who else do you have, since you want to give a shout-out to another Panther?
This guy just joined the team, actually. Gerald McCoy.
Okay.
I know that sounds a little weird, but actually not as much if you really think about it. He's been a 6-time Pro Bowler and a 4-time All-Pro, so pretty good player, I'd say. That's really what I have going for him. I mean, I would basically say he was the face of the Buccaneers for that 2010s. When they had like no playoff appearances, they've either been just bad or average. The one thing that's always consistent that that Gerald McCoy was going to put on his best performance. That's the one thing you would always count on. And, Gerald McCoy is no longer a Buccaneer. He's the Panthers. And that's why I get to talk with him with the Panthers.
Okay. There's actually, before we segue to the next team, there's actually, I'll use this as a segue. We'll call this the gateway drug. Even though he's the guy you're going to talk about for the Saints, the guy I'd talk about for the Saints, in Carolina, there's the statue of Sam Mills. Not one in New Orleans.
Yeah, I'm going to mention Sam Mills right now.
Yeah, honestly, let's just go right to New Orleans.
There's no way I'm not going to mention Sam Mills.
Because, let's go right to the Saints. My be-all and end-all, and at one point in time, thank God I decided not to do this, but if I'd ever get a tattoo of a football team, it'd be that one. Which, again, to all the kids out there, don't put a sports logo on your body. It's stupid. Don't be that guy. Also, don't be that guy that puts your own name on a jersey. You're not going to be called in to actually sub. I just wanted to put that out there. You never want to be that guy. If you're a girl, you can get away with that. If you're a cute girl, you definitely can get away with that. But, yeah, just don't ever do that. But yeah, when I went to those Panthers games, it's almost like Carolina has appropriated Sam Mills' history as their own.
He didn't play most of the season. Well, he coached there,
right? But and there was the history. What was it? A pound up? I'm trying to remember the name of what was it?
Keep pounding.
Keep pounding. Yeah, okay. I got the pound part right. So, but his stardom was as a New Orleans Saint.
Mm-hmm.
As a player.
Right.
Yeah. And if there's any former Saint that really should be in, it's Sam Mills, unless you want to make a case for Pat Swilling. Those are the only two Saints. And this is from someone who I never watched with a paper bag over my head, but I wanted to. Because they were so... oh my God, were they awful. What an awful team.
But before we get to the awfulness of the Saints and Bill Vinovich, let's talk a little bit about Sam Mills, because I think even though he was a Saint, I do feel like this is the perfect opportunity to mention the USFL,
which we haven't really. Let's go into it.
Yeah, the USFL, in case anyone doesn't know, was a spring football league that lasted in the mid '80s. It produced some fantastic players such as Reggie White, Jim Kelly, and Steve Young. Nate Newton, I think, was another player.
Can't forget Herschel Walker.
It was very, very well for its time. And it was the biggest competitor the NFL had
ever
since the merger.
Wow.
But why is the USFL not around anymore? Well, it's because New Jersey Generals owner, now president, Donald Trump. Yeah, it feels very weird saying this.
I just want to point out your country, not mine.
Yeah, my president. Well, I say my president because he's the president of the country that I live in, the United States of America. Back then, he was he was still a businessman, but he was also the owner of the New Jersey Generals.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, what I want to do? I want to fight with the NFL. No one can take me down, and Pete Rozelle will be bowing down my knees because we will win and we will take over everywhere in autumn. Everyone will be wearing a New Jersey Generals jersey, and all because of your buddy and your dear friend Donald Trump. That's basically how it went down, and it turned out to be a total disaster.
That was a good. Before we go any further, that was a really good impression of Colbert's impression of Trump.
I could actually do a very good Alec Baldwin impression of "Nice to understand you." How's it been today?
No, I really actually enjoy that. But yeah, continue with the story, because I think not everyone's aware of, because the USFL went under, and it probably didn't have to, and Trump was a big part of why it went under when it did.
Yeah, and now he's president of the United States. It's weird. It's weird that what can happen in life.
Only in certain countries.
yeah, and of course, America. What I like to say in America, we like to take our comedians as as a real and our comedians as a joke. No. We take our comedians seriously, and we take our politics as a joke.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Well, I would say a big reason for that is, a lot of reasons. But, I'm not talking about politics now. We're mentioning about football, of course.
Right, but yeah, you want to go into that story of the dog.
Sam Mills.
Yeah, because you're going back to the USFL, though, just to touch on that. Because, Mills was a great player there, but if I remember correctly, and just jump in if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember what I learned when I was watching that 30 for 30. It was basically he sued the NFL for for being a monopoly, and he actually won, but the settlement was $1.
$3.
$3. Oh, well, look at that. I was really $3. I thought it was $1. Well, not that it really matters.
No, it was $3. Well,
okay.
I think $2 went to the lawyers and $1 went to him.
Yeah. So what was the whole point of that? But so something they tried, and it was actually some pretty good football. I remember watching quite a bit of that as a young teen because I'm old and Vinny's not. So I did actually watch some of that. And and so there was some good players to come out of that, Mills being one of them. And the Pro Football Hall of Fame doesn't seem to give two shits about anything that happened in the USFL.
It's a little bit different. I do think times change now. They care about the NFL, obviously. They care about the AFL, and they care about the AAFC. USFL, you've been seeing more and more people wanting to see USFL stuff in there, and I honestly think there's no better person to bring that in and introduce it than with Sam Mills. Now, granted, he'd mostly be in for his contributions as the New Orleans Saints. Mm-hmm. However, I do think, for making a case for Sam Mills, people are going to mention he was USFL time and mention how he was a very dominant force when he was with the USFL. When he played for the Philadelphia/Baltimore Stars from 83 to 85, he was on the all USFL teams and all their years of existence, all three of them. He also won the USFL champion, both back-to-back, 84 and 85, and is a member of the USFL all-time team. But then soon after, the USFL folded because of me. So once that happened, they had the supplemental draft, and Sam Mills went on to play for the New Orleans Saints, which he ended up having a phenomenal career there, where he was a two-time All-Pro and a four-time Pro Bowler, and then he also went with the Panthers in his final 3 years of his career, where he also went to another Pro Bowl and another All-Pro. Sam Mills was truly a great player during his career, truly a great player. Mm-hmm. And it's just in the city of Carolina, a team like the Carolina Panthers, which isn't even the team that he mostly played for. He had such a huge impact that their calling cry is words that he said. I don't think I've ever seen that a person, just a player, their fight chant is from him. It's something pretty special.
I'm sure there is if we think about it, but God, no. What little brain cells I have left have to be sort of dedicated to writing other crap for the site. But Mills definitely deserves the time we're talking about him. The only other former Saint. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Mills has been a two-time semifinalist too. I should mention.
That's true. Also, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. The only other one former Saint worth mentioning is Pat Swilling, who really isn't getting a lot of attention. Probably won't ever, because I think not from even the Saints fan base. Because again, they weren't they went to the stadiums with paper bags on their head. They barely held on to their team for years. Because Tom Benson, who does get some praise for wanting to for eventually keeping the team there after Hurricane Katrina. He was shopping that team, and so well before, and eventually he did the right thing, and I'm certain. Well, I mean, the right thing by the city of New Orleans, and I don't know that. Kind of glad I don't have to be a San Antonio Saints fan. No disrespect to the city of San Antonio, a great city. I've spent time there, but there's just something about New Orleans Saints. So the fan base now is relatively young because the older fans weren't that good. Let's just put it bluntly. They were not great fans.
he played during the Dome Patrol days, but of course, when you think of the Dome Patrol, you think of Ricky Jackson.
Mm-hmm. And that's not a name that's not a name that's really going to Swilling's just not going to be that guy.
Huh? What?
Swilling is just not going to be that guy that people are going to rally around. They don't talk about him, and they won't.
I think Saints fans might.
No, they're not.
I think,
not to the degree that's sort of going to help propel him to get into the Hall of Fame.
Well, I would say, Swing was truly a good player during his time. Great linebacker, 4-time All-Pro, 2 of them first team, 5-time Pro Bowler, Defensive Player of the Year in 1991. And he also led the league in sacks in 1991. Now, granted, Ricky Jackson might also have more sacks, one of the most amount of sacks in the NFL, one of the most biggest sack leaders in NFL history. But Swing also has over 100 as well.
Sure. But, that's also becoming less and less of a notable feat. I like. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see Pat Swilling sort of at least get a look. I'm just saying that there's not enough of a push where if he never gets a look, I'll never be surprised.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. But there's actually another Saints that I think we should look at, even more so than Pat Swilling.
Who?
Leroy Glover.
Okay, sell me on that one.
Leroy Glover, I can tell you right now, 6-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, Defensive Player of the Year, also ranked as the Lineman of the Year in 2000, also led the league in sacks in 2000. Also, unlike Swilling, and unlike Mills, and unlike Jackson, I don't think Jackson was on here as well, he was part of an All-Decade team. Yes, Leroy Glover was part of the 2000s All-Decade team.
Glover could be an interesting one. I don't know if they're not really pushing for him either. It's like
I would say like Richard Seymour. I mean, there you have Warren Sapp. I was looking at the 2000s All-Decade team for the defensive tackles. Warren Sapp's already in. Seymour was the finalist this year. Then you have the two in the second team. You have Leroy Glover and you have Kevin Williams, who I'll mention later when we get to the NFC North.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, I don't know, when it comes to Leroy Glover, it's one of those guys that I see maybe getting a look later down the road, perhaps.
It'd be nice.
But it's not going to be for a little while.
Yeah, I could see that. And just in terms of current Saints, and again, it's Drew Brees. I'll just say this. I'm hoping, because I've never gone to a Pro Football Hall of Fame ceremony. I will when it's Brees' turn. The only thing I hope is that he doesn't retire the same year that Tom Brady does, because I want Drew Brees to be the headliner.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, when you have Drew Brees and Tom Brady both in the same class, Tom Brady's going to get the attention because.
And honestly, as much as I love Brees, well, Brady should be. Brady's the bigger star.
I mean, it's like he won 6 Super Bowls or something.
Right, and that to use the word Trump again, that does trump everything. It does, and it should. So I just
he did have a MAGA hat in his locker room once.
Who did?
Brady.
Oh, did he? Oh. I guess I blocked that out from my memory. I'm a Canadian. I naturally think left. So.
Yeah.
No, I actually didn't know that, and maybe that's just as well I didn't.
Yeah. Brees is obviously going to make the Hall of Fame, but I feel like before we mentioned this one other guy from the Saints, I do want to mention one last former Saints player. Sure. This guy played with Brees during his run, and is the best offensive lineman for the Saints in their history. Like, one that truly is a Saint. No, I take that back. Willie Rope was guard, interior lineman. Yeah, that's it. Jari Evans.
Yep. Yeah, Jari Evans was an excellent player.
Oh, he was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
6-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro. He was one of the best in his prime. For several years, he was considered arguably the best guard in the NFL.
He was incredible to watch. I mean, that's one team. Obviously, that's my focus every Sunday. I'm going to segue. Are you going to be watching the Hall of Fame? Like, do you watch a lot of preseason games? I just want to
Before
segue
I do,
into
I
this.
do want to mention one more.
One more. All
I
right.
do want to mention one more thing. What's going to be on Thursday? Well, Thursday, like on August 1st. What's going to be on August 1st?
The preseason. That's what I was just going to ask about the Hall of Fame game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hello?
Watch some Giants games, watch some Jets games. I also watch the ones that are nationally televised. And like some reruns I also watch. But the one that the preseason game the most excited for is the Hall of Fame game because, well, obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But what stadium do they play in?
The name of the stadium in Canton? Crap, I don't even know what the name of that stadium is.
The Tom Benson Stadium.
That's named the Tom Benson Stadium?
Yeah. Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium.
I did not even know that.
Yes, that's why I want to mention this one.
Wow.
Tom Benson, the reason why it's even called that is because he donated $11 million to the Hall of Fame. And $10 million of it would be renovating Foster Stadium, which was renamed the Tom Benson Stadium. And that's actually why I want to mention him. His name is on the stadium for the Hall of Fame. Do you think maybe some could say maybe he deserves a look?
I think there's a lot of people in New Orleans who will say yes because he kept the team there. And I swear that's almost enough. I really do think that.
Yes. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Tom Benson was a beloved figure, like truly a beloved figure in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Obviously, he was the owner of their lone Super Bowl victory.
Mm-hmm.
He was also the owner during very rough times as well, when Jim Moore was the head coach and they lost in the playoffs every year.
Playoffs?
Their very first playoff win.
Playoffs?
Came in 2000.
I'm just trying to win a game.
That was when he was with the. That's when he was with the Colts.
I just wanted to do my playoffs bit.
We just sucked.
Look, if you could do impressions, I can do impressions.
Yeah. What are you doing at Tom Benson's Hall of Fame case? I feel the same way.
The thing is, it's not like I said earlier when I was talking a little bit about Benson. It's like, yeah, I'm glad he kept the team there, but it wasn't like he didn't actively explore other opportunities because he did for many years. Overall, the team wasn't necessarily that great for a long period of time. Didn't have a winning record. Does he deserve a place and sort of to be celebrated in the city of New Orleans? Absolutely. And the whole Pro Football Hall of Fame, I wouldn't hate it, but again, as a Saints fan, you think I should be pounding the drum for some people. I'm not pounding that drum at all. I'm not.
No, I mean, honestly, if you were to ask me, I think the owner from the NFC South that probably deserves the most amount of look is Arthur Blank, honestly.
I agree.
Because, Arthur Blank might have never won a Super Bowl, but I would say he's a far bigger force in the NFL. His team has won more games, even though it wasn't the biggest one. And he truly is, he's done a lot for the city and just the NFL itself. But for Tom Benson, really the only thing that he has going for him is the fact that, he won the Super Bowl. His name is on the stadium, and the team's still in New Orleans. I mean, if Art Modell this is why I support Art Modell for the Hall of Fame, because I don't care if he kept the team there. Yeah, that's big, but how were you as an owner?
No, and I get that. And I get that, and that's why I'm trying to be sort of objective there. I mean, like, what Benson did, sort of like electing to keep everything in New Orleans, and he could have made a lot more money somewhere else. He definitely could have.
Yeah, he could have.
And he didn't. Why, I'm not quite sure. Maybe he figured at the age he was, because he was quite old when he passed away. He probably figured, well, I got enough.
90.
And then he turned around. He did buy the Pelicans in basketball.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so... there is something there. Like, I wouldn't have a problem with him going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. but I'm not going to say, hey, I'm not going to start a petition either. I wouldn't sign one either.
Yeah. But at the same time, there are better owners not named Tom Benson that aren't in the Hall of Fame. And spoiler, he is not going to be on the list for contributors and coaches that I'm making. He's not going to be anywhere on that list.
Well, I mean, I didn't even realize that that his name was on the stadium there. I should know that. I didn't, but
I would say that's probably the biggest thing he has going for himself for the Hall of Fame.
No, you're right. You're probably right. I mean, like every time I think of Benson, I'll always remember as a kid first starting to watch Saints games, like every time they would win, which was so rare. He'd come out with that umbrella, doing his little old white man shuffle, which is kind of how I dance now. So I guess maybe that's where I picked it up.
Yeah, Tom Benson. Again, there's better owners than him, and let's move on to the final team,
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
South, and the black sheep of them, because unlike the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers, they did not originate from the NFC South. They originated from the NFC Central.
That's right. Yes, oh God, I remember those annual Battle of the Bay games, Green versus Tampa.
Yeah, and there's a reason as to why Barry Sanders ran all over the Buccaneers. Do you think it's just because he just has to be good against the Buccaneers? No, it's because they were in the same division and they played each other twice a year.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's why.
It's so many memories are flooding back, and yet it seems like they were never in that division. Sometimes I forget how old I am.
Yeah.
But Tampa, though, would you agree, though, right now, out of all, Tampa is a threat right now to put 2 Hall of Famers in Lynch and Barber.
4, maybe 5
for next year.
Former Buccaneers. No, not next year. I don't think either of them. I don't think either the top 2 are going to make it this year. But I think they have a good chance. There's also 3 others that I think also do.
Before you get there,
look.
You don't think John Lynch is going to get in this year or next year?
I think there's going to be 2 safeties that make it as a modern era finalist this year that make it in. Those are going to be Troy Polamalu and Steve Atwater. I think Lynch. I want Lynch in, but if you want to tell me personally, I think he's gonna be a finalist in his 8th year of eligibility. I think he's gonna be a finalist for the 7th time, and again missed it. Oh God.
Well, you know what though?
If makes you feel bad for him.
If it's at the expense of Steve Atwater getting in, I got no problem with it. He can wait a year.
Yeah, Steve Atwater. Come on, that's a name. Buccaneers fans. Lynch was also a former Bronco, but Buccaneers fans may want John Lynch, but as we know, Broncos fans want Steve Atwater, and Atwater's a guy that's waited far longer than Lynch. And yes, Lynch may have been a finalist more times, but Atwater's a guy that he literally was the very last guy to get cut when it went from 10 to. From 10 to 5, he was literally the last guy to get cut. That's why I think Atwater's going to make it this year. As for Lynch, I don't see him making it this year, but I think Lynch is, without question, as a player. And there's not many players that have had 9 Pro Bowls and not make the Hall of Fame. The few that are like that, Orfanica, Trier, who might never make it, Sweeney, Reuben Brown, and Maxie Vaughn, who I'll mention in part 7. Lynch was truly when you think of the 3 major pieces for the Tampa 2 defense, what it entailed: the defensive tackle, the outside linebacker, and the safety. The defensive tackle was Warren Sapp. The outside linebacker was Derek Brooks. Who was that safety? And he was actually there longer than both of those 2 players. It was John Lynch. John Lynch was truly a disruptor on the field. Like I said, 9-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, a second-team All-Pro, over 1,000 tackles for his career. He would have tackles that would be called for a flag today.
So true.
That's how good he was. Now, granted, that's kind of with a lot of the players that have played safety.
Yeah. So you got Rondé as another. Who's your other 2?
Rondé, well, I'm going to mention Rondé. And as you know, my favorite player growing up was Tiki Barber. But I would say Rondé's going to make it to Canton, but Tiki's going to buy a ticket. But I'm going to mention Tiki.
Tiki can be the +1 at Rondé's ceremony.
Oh, yeah, I would not be shocked if, Tiki inducts Rondé. But, Rondé, he was on the All-Decades team. He was a 5-time Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, also led the interceptions for a year. He also played from 1997 to 2012. He was also an Iron Man, too. By that, he holds the record for the most amount of consecutive starts by a defensive back in history.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of Rondé Barber. You don't have to sell me on him.
Yeah, 13 seasons where he started every single game.
And he's got the broadcasting career that his brother doesn't have. Oh, oops, was that out loud again?
Yeah. Actually, Tiki does have his own show, but, Rondé...
Where does Tiki have his own show? On PBS or public broadcasting?
CBS Sports Network, actually.
Does he really? Okay, I didn't even know that.
Tiki and Tierney. But I would say that, Rondé Barber, without a doubt, is a future Hall of Famer.
I don't get that channel in Barbados, so.
Yeah. Now, there are a few other Buccaneers that may not be like Lynch or Barber, but I think they also probably deserve a really good look. Let's start with the one that was a semifinalist, like that, not in 2019, but in 2018, Simeon Rice.
Yeah, a very good one.
Simeon Rice also played at the beginning of his career with the Cardinals. But he spent most of his career, the most dominant years of his career, with the Buccaneers. That's why I mentioned him here. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year, 3-time Pro Bowler. He was also a 4-time All-Pro. Again, it's basically de facto Pro Bowl at that point. He recorded 122 sacks, 25 forced fumbles, recovered 8 of them, and also intercepted 5 passes. I mean, I would say, yeah, he's definitely a qualified player.
And your fourth?
Yeah, I'm gonna go from the defensive side to the offensive side here. What offensive position do you see less now? Like you never see it at all?
That you never see at all?
Yes. What offensive skill position do you never see anymore?
Flanker.
What about fullback?
Well, you still see fullbacks. You don't see a lot of traditional fullbacks anymore.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to know a real fullback?
Sure. Tell me.
Mike Allstott.
Mike Allstott, man, he used to get a lot of love on television, yeah.
Mike Allstott, without a doubt. Nicknamed the A-Train. 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro. I mean, he was a truly, truly, truly dominant player. He was also in the NFL top 10 power backs. He was ranked number 10. But he could have had a longer career. I mean, he's been from 96 to 2007, but the reason why it ended was because neck injury.
Oh, guy barely had a neck, which is still amazing that he could get a neck injury. But yeah, Allstott was a beast, like an absolute beast. It's sort of amazing. What was it back? I'm trying to remember. Was it back-to-back that Brad Johnson wins the Super Bowl and then Trent Dilfer wins one?
No, it was Trent Dilfer won in 2000, and then 2 years later it was Brad Johnson.
Okay, I knew it was close.
Oh yeah.
Well, sort of
to be fair, at least Brad Johnson had a good season that year. Dilfer literally just came in and won the Super Bowl.
Right,
but Brad Johnson at least went to the Pro Bowl.
I always sort of like remember that because those were like these two power defensive teams, and like now not that defense doesn't matter, it does, but you cannot win without a great quarterback, or at least a quarterback who's having a great season. Because I mean,
Johnson did have a good year. He had 22 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions.
Yeah, but the good is not great. Johnson
but
was...
Again, it's also Brad Johnson, let's be real here.
Yeah, he was good enough, let's just say.
But going with Mike Allstott, remember how I was talking about how, safeties are getting the love that they kind of need?
Yeah.
Safeties with that backlash of that, you're seeing it. Mike Allstott played fullback, and he was probably, I think you make a good case that he was probably, I'm looking at the All-Decade team for the 1990s. Just looking at that right now. 1990s All-Decade team, just looking at it as we speak. We look at it. Yeah, they didn't have a fullback in the 1990s All-Decade team. If there was,
it would have been Allstott.
Yeah, he would have been first team.
For sure.
I guarantee he would have been first team All-Pro.
For sure. As he should have.
Without a doubt.
As he should have. And that's some of the stuff I miss, like from those old days, like a true fullback.
Yeah, he was a true fullback, and because I'm one who really, really likes, I'm a guy that I know the history, but I want to also respect it. I think a great way to show a lot of love to a position. You're gone, but let's have a nice parting gift. I think the perfect parting gift for the fullback position is with Mike Allstott. I really do think, Allstott, A-Train, easily. I think Allstott definitely deserves a look. However, he has not been a semifinalist yet. And however, I do think Buccaneers fans can make the push for Mike Allstott. Because he truly was.
Could. And as much as it's sort of a left field candidate, it's not a name that when you hear it, you go like, what? Wait, that makes... Well, wait a minute. Let me think about that again. And then you think about it more and more and more, and he's a name you can talk yourself into.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Allstott, I didn't really think about it at first. Like I said, fullback.
I didn't either.
Okay, yeah.
I did not even think of him before this conversation. And as soon as you're bringing it up, I went from like, what the fuck are you saying to, okay, yeah, Vinny's making a good point. Damn you making a good point again at my expense.
It's almost like when I mentioned Harold Jackson. I think it was like Henry Jackson, like from with the Rams, when I mentioned how Harold Jackson had the most amount of receiving yards in the 70s.
Right.
Like you said, whoa, what the hell was that?
I did not know that. I would have got that wrong on a Sporkle challenge. Damn Sporkle. I've lost many hours of my life to that.
Yeah, the final... There's also one other guy from the Tampa 2 era Saints that I do want to mention, and probably was known for being in the middle of that great 4-3 defense. It was Hardy Nickerson.
Yeah, another good player. Very good player.
5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, Man of the Year in 1997, and was a part of the All-Decade team. In fact, like on the list, all the first-team linebackers made it, but the 3 second-team linebackers, Nickerson, Bennett, and Kirkland, all have not made the Hall of Fame. And if you were to ask me, I think as a bunch, that Bennett is probably better, but I think Nickerson's not that far behind. But, Nickerson was a central figure for that Tampa 2 defense.
Very much so.
It only makes sense. I mean, it makes sense, incorporate the Tampa 2 defense and not have the centerpiece of it.
So what about Gruden then?
What? What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Really? Okay.
How about Gruden? If you want to talk about a guy that was a part of the Tampa 2 defense, why not talk about the guy who invented the damn thing? Monty Kiffin.
Okay.
I know that sounds a little bit weird, considering, he never was a head coach, but he was one of the greatest defensive minds in NFL history. There's so many teams nowadays that use the Tampa 2 cover defense. It was all because of him. Well, and also Tony Dungy, but mostly Monty Kiffin. Monty Kiffin was basically
Is Monty Kiffin going to appear on your other list? So that's also a nice little way to promote what you're working on, actually, for the site. Vinny's been kind enough to work on... How many is that going to be, actually?
It's going to be... I'm thinking maybe like 20.
Okay.
I do mention there are going to be... I think there's going to be like at most 4 assistants on there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit of a spoiler. The 4 assistant head coaches I'm going to have on that list. And I want to mention 3 of them when we get to the NFC North. But it's going to have Clark Shaughnessy, Buster Ramsey, Buddy Ryan, and Monty Kiffin.
And just so everyone knows what this is, it's a list of non-players.
Yeah. The reason as to why I'm giving love to the assistant head coaches is because the reason as to why, for my top guys, the reason why the people on my list, but the very top 5 on my list, the reason why they're that high, because they really changed the game. I love innovators because I feel if you are the innovator of something that's just commonplace today, why shouldn't you be in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. It almost stems, I know this is a horrible sort of analogy, but when I first built the site, it's originated with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a big part of what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame talks about is to get in is to be basically an originator or an influencer. 6 in one, half dozen in the other. But that idea does transcend into sports. In all sports. I mean, just coming up with some great idea that changes the game, especially a game of thought, of human chess like pro football is. I mean, nowhere and in any other team sport does coaching matter more than football. Probably more than all the other sports combined. That's how strongly I feel about that.
Oh, I agree 100%. I'm a guy that absolutely loves innovators and people that really change the game. Like guys that change the game. Those are like the reason why Don Coryell, my most wanted head coach, is not because of his great track record as a head coach. It's because
I agree.
He was the grandfather. He created Air Coryell. I mean, there's very few things in terms of NFL history or just sports history that coaches, every single coach nowadays looks up to Don Coryell.
Right, I agree.
They do.
Total agreement.
But there's one final former Buccaneer, now Falcon, that I feel like we should mention.
All right.
You can have these great teams all you want. You could have your Warren Sapp. You could have your Derek Brooks and your John Lynch, your Rondé Barbers. You have your Mike Allstott. You can have all that great. That's all nice. But who's drafting them? Who's going to be drafting those guys? There has to be someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it only made sense for the guy who was the son of their first ever head coach to be the guy that did it. Rich McKay.
It's another good name.
Rich McKay, I feel very, very strongly about. He was their general manager for 10 years. Of course, got to all those Hall of Fame players. Then he went into the division when he signed with the Atlanta Falcons, their general manager for 5 years before he became their president and CEO, which, of course, he's done fantastic for the Falcons. And by the way, in case you're wondering, Dimitrov is a little bit way lower down the list. But for McKay, not only is he big with the Buccaneers and the Falcons, he's also a big name in NFL circles because he is the head of the competition committee. In fact, he's been there for over 26 years. And the last 22, he's been the head of it.
That's a very good name.
What?
No, I was agreeing with you. It's a very good name. One that people aren't going to really think about, but should.
Well, I'm going to mention it, obviously.
Oh, well, you already did.
Yeah, and not only that, he's also, besides the competition committee, he's also on the NFL Council working group of league executives for collective bargaining agreements. So, for the help of the league bargaining agreements, he's a major figure in that. And also, he's a member of their health and safety committee. So we're not just talking about a guy that's been influential. We're not one, but 2 franchises. He's also a name that is extremely influential for just the NFL itself.
And that does matter. I mean, they will look within. That does bode well, for sure.
Yeah, Rich McKay is, again, he's not going to be on the list because, he's still active. And unlike the owners are the only active ones that are going to be on the list. But Rich McKay is definitely a guy that I want more people to consider. And going back with Monty Kiffin, there is a voter, Ira Kaufman, who was the Bucks, the guy from Tampa that the affiliate who votes. He mentioned that he wants to make a case for Monty Kiffin. And I honestly think, I just say go for it. Because the Buccaneers may have been a team that bad first part of their existence, bad now, but during that 90s and 2000s, I mean, oh my God, you just got to really think about just the magnitude of how much those teams really it just changed the game. John Lynch, Rondé Barber, Mike Allstott, Simeon Rice, Hardy, those guys. I mean, come on, all those names I mentioned. I mean, yeah, they may not seem as big, but knowing how influential that scheme of defense was definitely puts them at a higher bar than in other cases, I would say.
Oh, I would agree. I totally agree. If you're the champion, you took a lot of great pieces to get there, and not just on the field.
Oh yeah. I mean, not even the fact that they won; it's the fact of how influential those teams were.
Oh, everyone wanted to sort of try to copy that.
Oh yeah, and people are still copying the Tampa 2 defense, and it's all because of the Buccaneers.
All right, so we're up next. We're gonna. Oh my God, this went way longer than I thought. I can't even imagine.
I say that this gone. I would say probably because we didn't have as many limits in the AFC. I would say because, unlike the NFC West, because I know that there was gonna be a lot.
Well,
we didn't have as,
I'm gonna be putting. I'll be putting the 2-minute warning on some of these for when we get to the NFC East. That's for sure.
Oh, the NFC East. Oh man, that's gonna be a lot.
It's definitely gonna be a lot. And we're talking about fervent fan bases. We can just skip talking about Tiki Barber. I've already trashed him enough.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure when we get to the Cowboys gonna mention a lot, the Eagles gonna mention a lot, the Giants gonna mention a lot, the Redskins gonna mention a lot. The NFC East, of course, the most famous division in the NFL, the one that gets the most amount of screen time because all four of those teams, it's the richest division in the NFL. They get the most amount of primetime games. They have the biggest bases in the NFL. The D.C. area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, New York City, and Philadelphia are all big metro media markets. And it only makes sense, for a team that has, back at that time, it was very, very different. And, they got lots of teams. But if we're being honest, all those teams had great players, and I can't wait to mention the NFC because that's going to be extremely fun to talk about.
Like I said, that was the division I grew up watching because that was the only game on TV. It was always that. Other
than the Bills game.
I was never watching. No, yeah, they were so bad in the '80s. So they would have that early game, and then it would always be that late television game. Where the Giants at that time, they would always seem to be the 4:00 game. So it'd be it's like, God, I can't remember. I must have at least seen, every Giants Cowboys game because that was always a national game in the East.
Well, you already see every Giants Cowboys game because you always see them in the first week of the season, usually on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, but back then there wasn't Sunday Night Football.
Even today, you still see them on Sunday night, but they're not this year. They're on Monday Night Football, though.
I haven't really sort of taken a deep dive into the schedule. My biggest complaint, though, when I moved out here, now I'm in the Atlantic time zone. So once daylight savings hits, because there's none of that here. You don't need to change the clocks in Barbados. Nobody cares about that stupid nonsense here.
Yeah. Well, I would say this has definitely been very, very fun. I'm in the middle of the non-players section. It's going to take a little bit, but it's going to get done sooner rather than later. And NFC East is going to be next. When do you want to do it?
Let's do it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, by then we're going to be seeing the people get their gold jackets.
Yep.
We're going to see a speech from Gil Brandt. We're going to see a speech from Robinson and everyone else, except for Pat Bowlen. Again, Broncos fans, don't worry, you have Champ Bailey as well.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be good. That's coming up. Then preseason's now beginning. It's weird how much I watch preseason, knowing every play doesn't mean a damn thing, but I can't stop watching.
Oh, actually, that's not true.
Oh, come on.
No, it is. What if the guy gets injured?
Well, okay, if I was more talking about strategic things, but okay, yes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yes, in terms of injuries, the great players aren't playing as I wouldn't want them to either. I just miss football. I'm just so excited to watch it, even in this capacity.
That's why you have me discussing this stuff for you.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll talk in 2 weeks. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks so much, Kirk. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.